Good afternoon, everybody. As you guys can see, we have a completely different background today, and this is going to be the way it's going to stay. I did some major rearranging of furniture this weekend, so I moved my desk, so now I'm facing the window, so you can see my face, which is wonderful, instead of that kind of half light, half dark two-faced thing that was going because my desk was facing the wall, and I had the sunlight coming in from one side and the shadow coming in from the other side where there's no sunlight. So now you can see me. It looks better. You can see the background. I've got a cool picture of the stars. Regardless, this is the way I'm going to have things set up going forward. So I hope you enjoy. And with that being said, let's dive into the topic for today, which is being versus having. So most people, the way they think is they think about having stuff, right? And stuff doesn't necessarily mean physical stuff, but they can think, man, I just need more money, or I need more time, or I need that promotion, or I need that life, that lifestyle, that guy and that Ferrari who's driving around and he says he's only working 20 hours a week, or he's not even working at all because he's got this passive income. I want to have that, right? And people think about having, right? And the problem is that when you talk to people who say those things and think those things, and you keep an eye on them, they don't ever get what it is that they want to have, right? And sometimes they do. Sometimes, many years and much struggle later, 30 years later, they have what they were working for. But it's something that they have to fight for, that they have to struggle for, and many times it just never happens. And I want to talk to you guys about why that was, because the truth is that it shouldn't be that hard. But that very mindset of wanting to have things is what creates that problem in the first place. It's what makes it so hard. It's what makes it take so long. So let's kind of just break it down, right? First off, at the very practical level, wanting to have something is it's not attached to an action, right? It's like, oh, well, that's the end point. This is where I am. And I just wish I could just skip everything in the middle. It's focused. It's detached from the interlude between where you are and where you want to be, right? So because it's detached from what goes in between, people don't go take action. It's a very practical thing, but people, they just sit there and they imagine this end state, but there's no clear call to action. There's no clear next steps that are associated intrinsically with that mindset. Now, the second thing is it keeps people focused not on what they want, but on what they don't have. So, when people are thinking about, well, if only I had this, right? They're focusing on the scarcity. They're focusing on the lack. And that's not very motivating, to be frank. And, if you're at all aware of the law of attraction, that also isn't a good situation in terms of if you're focusing on scarcity, you're going to attract more scarcity, right? And there's both practical and spiritual rules there. But the third component is that from a very, and this is a very woo-woo spiritual kind of standpoint, when you're focusing on having stuff, you're focusing on attachment and control and possession. And that kind of energy, the universe will not work with you. And I know that sounds crazy to some people, and they're like, oh, well, there's no such thing, and blah, 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 blah. But if you believe in God, or if you want to go do an experiment and observe it, because I didn't used to believe any of that woo-woo stuff either until I went and actually started writing stuff down and doing experiments, right? That kind of energy will not serve you well. The universe will not cooperate with you. I promise, right? So what's the alternative, right? If that's the situation and that's what doesn't work, then what does, right? And the solution is, instead of thinking about having or not having, start thinking about being the kind of person that you want to be, being the kind of person to whom having those things comes naturally. Because when you focus on being, everything changes. So the first thing is, when you focus on being, the action that results from that is very, very, very simple, right? It's not like with having, you're focusing on what you don't have. With being, you're focusing on, hey, listen, this is who I am. And automatically, right, who I am does certain things, right? It's built into the thought process that you're going to start doing certain things or not doing certain things, because this is the kind of person you are, right? And that consistency, it gets wired into your brain at a very fundamental level. And the result is that it causes you to take action that you would not have even thought of if you're going from the having standpoint. And it won't, and it's not even something where you're going to take it like, oh, well, I guess I have to go do this. It's going to happen naturally. You're naturally going to take the action that's going to move you closer to your goals. And that's going to make it happen much, much, much faster. Now, the second component, right, is just like earlier when we talked about if you're in that state of focusing on having, you're focusing on what you don't have. If you're focusing on being, then by its very nature, you're focusing on the future. You're focusing on what you want. You're focusing on where you're going. And you're focusing on the fact that you can not just have that at some indefinite point in the future, but you can start today by being that kind of person. You can start today. And so that focus gives you a lot of motivation because you get a lot of reward. You get an intrinsic feedback mechanism every day. Am I acting, behaving, thinking like the kind of person who I want to be? Right? And so that's really, really, really powerful, right? Because it'll keep you motivated towards becoming that kind of person, great, and to a greater and greater propensity day in and day out, right? And then finally, from the spiritual perspective we talked about earlier, right? When you're focusing on being, you're not focused on growth. You're not focused on attachment. You're not focused on having and possession and control. You're focused on growth. You're focused on expansion. You're focused on expression of your authentic self. You're focused on flow. You're focused on all of these things that have an energy where the universe will just work with you a lot more, right? You can call it karma. You can call it God. You can call it whatever you want to call it. I don't really care, right? You can call it some unknown law that we just haven't figured out yet in science. I don't care what you call it, but if you go out and you observe it, it works, right? So when you're operating from that energy of focusing on being, right, you've got that energy of, hey, listen, I'm here to be my best self. And that's very different than, and you can even think about it. If you're just thinking about people that you're interacting with, if you talk to somebody who's like, hey, listen, I'm focused on being the kind of person that I'm meant to be, you're going to be a lot more favorable to them than somebody who says, man, I just want some stuff. Like intrinsically, you're wired to recognize that difference, right? And so just think about that. Like all of society, the whole universe, everything is gonna operate on that paradigm. And so here's the kicker: is when you start focusing on being, then you're rapidly going to become that kind of person. And once you become that kind of person, all the stuff that you used to focus on having, you're gonna get, and it's gonna happen very quickly. It's gonna be almost like magic. There's gonna be a synchronicity of stuff. But when you are that kind of person, then it flows naturally. When you are that kind of person, then things happen that you wouldn't otherwise expect, that you couldn't even imagine from that old paradigm, right? So, when you focus on being instead of focus on having, then not only do you become what you want to be, but you end up getting the things that you used to want to have. So it's really a win-win-win all the way around. So that's something that, my question to you is, what is it that you want to be, right? Think about, you can think about in every area of your life. You can think about it in your relationships. What kind of, father, or husband, or wife, or mother, brother, or sister do you want to be? What kind of son or daughter do you want to be? What kind of human being do you want to be, right? And in the area of careers, what kind of professional do you want to be, right? Do you want to be, an accountant? Do you want to be a mechanic? Do you want to be an executive? Do you want to be a human resources director? Do you want to be a programmer? I don't know what you are, but ask. If you look at what you're doing right now, is that really the identity that you want? Is that who you want to be? And if you want to be something else, if you want to be, an entrepreneur, you want to be a teacher, you want to be, a coach, or you want to be whatever else it is you want to be, then start taking steps to become that person day in and day out. What would that person do? If you already were that person, what actions would you take, right? And so, that may involve a big transition, right? That's just the nature of it, right? For those people who are going through that transition, I'm always here to help. You can go to www.oculusinstitute.com/scheduling, and I will help you through that transition. I'll help you plan it. I'll help you take some of the steps. I'll show you, the different mechanics of making that transition, because it's not something that they teach in school. I'm more than happy to do that. But at the end of the day, the focus that you want to be paying attention to is, who do you want to be, and how would that person act, behave, and think today, right? And very quickly, you're going to become that person, and your life will take off. And then all the things that you used to focus on wanting to have, you're going to get. And it's a magical way to live. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed everything this afternoon. I look forward to speaking to you soon, and have a good one.